Chapter 45:03. Chinamo held her hand and stared at it for a while before he smiled. "You're complimenting me for my good taste." As he spoke, he took the phone from her hand and threw the key to her to open the door. He downloaded Juan's photo with one hand and sent it to himself via WeChat before returning the phone to her. Of course, Juan saw what he was doing and blushed. "Chinamo, don't you feel bored? That's not the point, okay? The photo is pretty good." Chinamo scrolled through his phone casually. "To me, that's the point." Juan was fuming. She opened the door and really wanted to shut him out. Of course, she didn't dare to. After Chinamo returned home, he admired the photos for a while. He set up the screensaver and the desktop. He felt especially good. Of course, he was newly married and in love. Even if the whole world added up his mood, he wouldn't be as happy as he was. Although there were some things that he wasn't satisfied with, he felt that it was good enough. Juan's health would get better, and he wouldn't force her to have a child. So, Chinamo was living a very good life. He leaned against the sofa and kept scrolling through his phone. Juan waited for a long time, but he didn't seem to have any intention of cooking. Juan couldn't stand it anymore. She had been watching TV, but now she stretched out her leg and kicked him. Chinamo looked at her and then looked at his phone. It's already 7. Juan rarely threw a tantrum. "I'm hungry." Chinamo smiled and reached out to stroke her hair. He said very gently, "I'll go cook for you." "I'm hungry too. When are you going to cook for me?" Juan's eyes widened and she stared at him. She wasn't sure if he was joking or not. Chinamo smiled. "Little Mrs. Chin, you're thinking too much." As he spoke, he rubbed her hair affectionately and got up to cook, looking like a good family man. In fact, Juan really thought he was good. After a while, she thought about it and opened Weibo. She looked at the photo of them, at the expression on Chinmo's face when he kissed her. He seemed to really like her. Juan continued to watch TV. The house was very warm. She had already taken off her coat. She curled up on the sofa barefooted, feeling very warm and comfortable. She could hear the sound of Chinmo processing the ingredients coming from the kitchen. She suddenly felt that this kind of life was not bad. Perhaps she could also learn to cook. After waiting for a while, Chinmo brought some fruits over. They were all tropical and wouldn't be too cold. "Let's get some rest first." He kissed her. "It'll take about an hour. No matter what, we should eat better on the second day of the new year." Juan nodded obediently and said with a smile, "Go ahead, Mr. Chin. I'll be responsible for eating all of these." Chinmo smiled and walked to the kitchen. Juan continued to eat the fruits happily. She was so satisfied that her eyes narrowed. After eating most of the fruits, her stomach was a little full. She remembered that there was going to be a big meal later, so she stopped eating and carried the fruits to the kitchen. She watched Chinmo cook. He was probably cooking Thai food. Juan liked to eat Thai food. She saw that his movements were very fast, so it should be delicious. She wanted to cause trouble and asked all sorts of questions. Later, Chinmo found her annoying and wanted to chase her back to the living room. Of course, Juan wouldn't let him. She threw a tantrum and hugged him from behind. "Chinmo, it's so boring watching TV alone." Chapter 45:04. Chinmo smiled and walked to the kitchen. Juan continued to eat the fruits happily. She was so satisfied that she squinted her eyes. After eating most of it, her stomach was a little full. She remembered that there would be a big meal later, so she stopped eating and carried the fruits to the kitchen, watching Chinmo. Working hard to update. Please refresh later. This chapter is working hard to update. Please refresh later. Hey handsome guys and pretty girls who want to visit us on mobile, please register as a member first. Chi-Chi.net debut register as a member of this site and use the bookmark function for easier reading. If this chapter is about the author asking for votes, please skip to the next chapter. Please bookmark this page so that you can read it later. Otherwise, you won't be able to find this chapter. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations Tang Wu Wei, Urban Romance. Abstinent Young Master Li Flirting. Abstinence Young Master Li Explode the Sky. Content Summary. No, you're too big. What's too big? Hubby, your thick thighs. Yun Yin was engaged to the most powerful man in the empire. People envied her for marrying Li Yuding, saying that her man had the most powerful backing and the thickest golden thigh. However, one morning, Yin posted on Weibo as Mrs. Lee, GM Lee, we are divorced. Please respect yourself. In less than a minute, Lee Yuting, the head of the Lee Corporation, replied with a message. Honey, it's getting cold. Let's talk about our private affairs in bed. Be good and give me your phone. Countless netizens were seething and said, kick over this bowl of dog food. We won't eat it. /abstinence, young masterly, explode the sky. Forwarding address, /HTML, /111/111545 /111/111545 content reading. Chapter 1. 2 months of pregnancy diagnosis. Secretary Yin. This is my 2-month pregnancy diagnosis. The child is CEO Lee's. A report suddenly fell from the sky and landed right in front of Yun Yin. Yun Yin raised her head and saw a delicate, yet arrogant face. You are? Yun Yin frowned. The woman looked down at her proudly. I'm President Lee's girlfriend, Li Fei. Oh, Yun Yin remembered. She was wondering why this woman's face looked so familiar. 2 months ago, a paparazzi published a gossip about a new singer, Li Fei, and Li Yuting spending a romantic night together in a hotel. The news only appeared on the internet for less than an hour before it was wiped out by the public relations department of the Li Group in a thunderous manner. She glanced at the pregnancy diagnosis and calculated the time. It matched up with the scandal from 2 months ago. As if knowing what she was thinking, Li Fei rubbed her belly and smiled. You guessed right. It was 2 months ago when I was pregnant with President Lee's child. Yin raised an eyebrow. Miss Lee, I'm not the one who made you pregnant. What's the point of you looking for me? She choked on her words. I've looked into you. You're the woman who has been by CEO Lee's side the longest. I don't believe you two aren't related. This pregnancy report is to tell you that if you know what's good for you, you'd better keep your distance from CEO Lee. Otherwise, if I become Mrs. Lee, you'll be the first one I treat. Yin was interested. Since you're CEO Lee's girlfriend, do you know what kind of woman he hates the most? Li Fei was stunned. What kind of woman? A woman who has plastic surgery. You have plastic surgery. Li Fei was furious. Miss Lee, you know best whether I have plastic surgery or not. Under Li Fei's angry gaze, Yin pushed away the chair and stood up. She said generously, however, I will hand this pregnancy report to CEO Lee on your behalf. I hope that Miss Lee can become Mrs. Lee soon. After that, she ignored Li Fei's embarrassed expression and left. As soon as she got out of the elevator, Yin saw the secretaries standing in a row. Linda waved at her. Yin, come here. Yin immediately went over. What's wrong? Assistant Chen just called. He said that CEO Lee will be here soon. He should be in the elevator now. Another secretary, Andy, said excitedly, CEO Lee will be away for almost a month. We should welcome him well. As he said that, he showed off his 36D breasts. Yin quietly looked away. The elevator door opened with a ding sound. The man who walked out of the elevator was wearing a black custom-made suit. His slender body was perfectly wrapped in well-tailored clothes. His deep, chiseled face, which usually showed a sense of indifference and alienation, was now faintly carrying suppressed anger. There weren't many people in this world who could make CEO Lee so angry. Just as Yin was trying to figure out what was going on, Li Yuting suddenly walked towards her. Yin suddenly had a bad feeling. Usually, in the company, in front of outsiders, he never acted intimately with her. He didn't even look at her. In his eyes, she was like air. Therefore, in the entire company, only a few people knew that she was a married woman. And no one knew that she was Mrs. Lee, abstinence young masterly. Forwarding address, /HTML, /111/111545 /HTML, /111/111545 Chapter 4505. In the end, it was already very, very late when they had dinner together. However, no one cared. They sat quietly under the crystal lights in the dining room. It seemed to be the best time they had in years. Perhaps it was because she was getting old, she was too embarrassed to sit on his lap to eat. They just sat opposite each other. However, such peace and beauty were already very satisfying. It was so satisfying that she almost forgot that she was a director, and a very good one at that. Now, she just wanted to be Qin Mo's girl. After dinner, Qin and Mo tidied up and took Yi Huan to the French window. She didn't know when a piano had appeared there. The black body of the piano was crystal clear, and Yi Huan could still see that it was worth more than 8 million. Qin and Mo sat over and looked at her. Not coming over, Yi Huan walked over slowly. Where should I sit? Just as she finished asking, her arm was grabbed by Qin and Mo. Then, she fell onto his lap, and her whole body was in his arms. That moment of warmth made Yi Huan dazed for a moment. Then, she felt her face pressed against his arm, feeling his warmth through the fabric of his shirt. She instinctively moved and leaned back. Above her head, she heard Qin Mo's low laughter. He reached out and gently rubbed her hair. He smiled. I'm going to start. What do you think of playing for Elise? Yi Huan was originally very embarrassed, especially when she leaned against him like this. She could especially feel his masculinity, and her face was a little hot. She didn't say anything and just leaned against him. Qin Mo's slender fingers began to play gently. To Yi Huan's surprise, he played very well. It was very smooth and graceful, like the clouds and flowing water. Moreover, when he played, his expression was very charming, and his fingers were also very beautiful. Yi Huan leaned against him and looked at him. In the past, she only thought that Qin Shen's fingers were very beautiful because they were holding scalpels. Only now did she realize that Qin Mo's fingers were very beautiful, slender, and very strong. It was very pleasing to the eye, so Yi Huan was a little distracted when she looked at it. Qin Mo was still playing the piano, but he asked in a low voice, "What are you looking at? Your face looks red." Yi Huan immediately covered his face and realized that he had been tricked. Qin Mo chuckled. He lowered his head and rested his chin on the top of her head. They seemed to be very close. Yi Huan's face became even hotter. In the end, her whole body was in his arms. Then he played a lot of music and asked her what she wanted to hear, and all of them. Yi Huan felt that he was a freak and not human at all. It was a quiet night, sweet and warm. It was the best state of love, and it was also the best state they had been in these years. Then he kissed her for a long time. It was as long as the time he took to play the song. It was so long that it seemed like they'd spent their entire lives kissing. However, Yizhai was different from them. When Mubai picked up Wen Yuan, his expression was not very good. No man would like his wife to be on the hot search list with another man. Moreover, they were being talked about as if they were a good match. CEO Ye's handsome face was very long, and his expression was also very ugly. It was so ugly that Wen Yuan could not ignore it. "What's wrong with you?" Wen Yuan asked softly. Yi Mubai's fingers were on the steering wheel. He turned his head and looked at his wife. "It's nothing. There's something bothering me at work." Type Panda Literature into the search engine, and you will find this site. Thank you. Chapter 4502. The End of History. I Know a Lot, Mrs. Qin 5. Chapter 4506. Yi Mubai holds the steering wheel and looks at his wife sideways. "Nothing, just something bothering me at work." "Oh," said Madame Yi coldly. Yi Mubai is so angry that he almost smashes the steering wheel. But as a man, he is still a little proud. After a while, he says in a hoarse voice, "Haven't you seen the Weibo?" Wen Yuan is a little strange. "My concert just ended, and then I attended a celebration party. Where did I get the time?" After saying that, she glanced at him. Yi Mubai doesn't say anything. He continues to drive with a gloomy old face. Wen Yuan takes the phone and murmurs while scrolling, "Yi Mubai, you look more and more like menopause. It's very dangerous for you to be like this." As he spoke, his gaze froze. After staring for a long time, he slowly turned his head. "Mubai, are you jealous?" Yi Mubai drives the car, and his face doesn't ease at all. After a while, he takes a cigarette and lights it, not stupid. Wen Yuan looks at him speechlessly and then puts down the phone. His voice is even lower. "We have been husband and wife for a long time. Yi Mubai, don't you think you are too childish?" Mr. Yi smokes, looks at the night in front of him, and says casually, "Say it again." Yi-Wan shuts up. After a while, she can't help saying, "You know me and Kong Xiao. There is no such thing. I care. Is there anything wrong with that?" The man, who is over 40 years old, confidently said. Wen Yuan is stunned for a moment, and then he laughs. She glares at him, and then ignores him. Anyway, it's not the first time that he is childish and ridiculous. It's okay to be angry, and it's okay to ignore him. Men can't be spoiled too much. Wen Yuan thinks so, and he has always thought so. She and Yi Mubai have a good marriage. She attributes it to her laziness. She still loves him, but Wen Yuan doesn't worry about gains and losses as before. On the contrary, Yi Mubai cares more and is suspicious all day long. Wen Yuan knows that it feels good to be cared about like this, but also a little annoying. Yes, she disliked him for being too annoying. Mrs. Yi leaned against the leather seat and sighed in her heart until the car stopped on the parking lot in front of the villa. At this time, Yi Xiangnan and Yi Hui were at Su Fu's place. The servants in the villa were also on vacation. Yi Mubai opened the car door and got off. He then went to his wife's side and opened the door for her. When Wen Yuan got out of the car, he teased him. "Can your face get any stinkier?" Yi Mubai's voice was low. "If you don't mind, I could do it too." Wen Yuan was a little speechless. "It's just trending. You are my wife, not Kong Xiao's wife." CEO Yi, who was in his early 40s, finally couldn't help but raise his voice. Wen Yuan looked at him with a strange expression. After a while, he said slowly, "If you care, why don't you remove the trending topic? Why are you getting angry at me now? Besides, I asked for your permission to go. The price I paid wasn't low." She reminded him of how much she had pleased him that night. But the past was the past. A man who was jealous was irrational. Moreover, he just wanted his wife to coax him, but she didn't want to. She doesn't care about him anymore. This is CEO Ye's recent experience and also something he is very dissatisfied with. Tip: type Panda Literature into the search engine, and you will find this site. Thank you. Chapter 4503. New York, you know a lot. Mrs. Chin 6. Chapter 4507. But Wen Yuan didn't realize it at all. Now, she still dared to talk back. CEO Yi thought of the time when she cared about him. It was so good back then. Wen Yuan could feel a change in his mood and even a change in his expression. She chased after him all day, wishing that she could be with him 24 hours a day. Sure enough, once you get it, you don't care anymore. It was the same for men, and even more so for women. Yi Mubai thought discontentedly. At this time, when Yuan had already walked towards the villa, he pulled her hand from behind. "Are you going to run away like this?" When Yuan couldn't stand this idiot husband, she turned her head. "Today is the second day of the Lunar New Year, Yi Mubai. You want to quarrel with me over a trending topic. Do you know how cold it is outside? It's -12 degrees, you pighead." After saying that, she broke free from him and ran into the villa. Yi Mubai stood there alone, feeling a little annoyed. She called him a pighead. No one had ever dared to scold him like that. Did he look like a pighead, or was his IQ like a pig's? She didn't say that when she slept with him at night. The arrogant CEO, Yi, was a little angry, so he didn't go back immediately. Instead, he took a pack of cigarettes and stood in the dark to smoke. As he smoked, he seemed to be in a bad mood. After when Yuan went back, she was actually a little tired and hungry. She wasn't used to the food at the celebration party. She even drank 2 glasses of wine. Now, she really wanted a bowl of hot noodles and a hot bath. Then, she would have the energy and mood to accompany him. She also knew that he must have been depressed for a long time. But this pig head, Wen Yuan was very angry. She went upstairs to take a hot bath with an empty stomach. When she went downstairs, she saw that Yi Mubai was still smoking outside. She was even more angry and went downstairs quietly. Her cooking skills were very good, but a spoiled woman always hoped that a man would love her more. But he only knew how to smoke. Wen Yuan was very angry, but she still poured an extra bowl of noodles. She didn't call him and ate it first. After eating, she poked her head out and saw that he was still smoking outside. Wen Yuan didn't want to talk to him and went upstairs. He didn't sleep, but watched the replay of the Spring Festival Gala in the living room upstairs. And Yimubai smoked 7 or 8 cigarettes before going back. As soon as he entered, he smelled the aroma of noodles. He went to the dining room to take a look. He left a bowl of noodles, but it was already cold. He didn't care too much. He sat down and finished his meal. When he wiped his lips, he felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction. Wen Yuan was his wife, not Kong Xiao's. With this thought in mind, he walked upstairs, taking off his coat as he walked. When they got upstairs, they saw Wen Yuan leaning on the sofa in her bathrobe, watching TV. She seemed a little tired and seemed to have fallen asleep. Her face was resting on a pillow, and her hair covered half of her face. Yimubai walked over and said in a low voice, "Why don't you sleep on the bed?" Wen Yuan woke up and opened his eyes to look at him. He was a little confused, and after a while, he gently closed his eyes again. "Have you eaten?" "I've eaten." His voice became gentle as he bent down to pick her up. "Let's go back to the room to sleep. It's a little cold here." Wen Yuan put his arms around his neck and said in a low voice, "Are you still angry with me?" As she spoke, she buried her face in his neck. It was warm and comfortable. It was so comfortable that she wanted to sleep. She was indeed a little tired these few days. She didn't have a good rest during the New Year. Tip: enter Panda Literature in the search engine to find this site. Thank you. Chapter 4504, Love. Chapter 4508. Wen Yuan wrapped his arms around his neck and said in a low voice, "Are you still mad at me?" As she said that, she buried her face in his neck. It was warm and comfortable. It was so comfortable that she wanted to sleep. She was indeed a little tired these few days. She hadn't had a good rest during the New Year. Yimubai lowered his head and looked at her tired yet gentle face. His heart ached a little. He regretted it as well. She was clearly very tired, and yet he was still like this with her. Moreover, she was clearly angry and even made noodles for him. She didn't even sleep in the room and waited for him here. Most men had a certain mentality. When they thought like this, they would feel that they were really great in some aspects. He lowered his head and kissed her face. He asked in a low voice, "Were you waiting for me?" Huan buried her face in his chest and hugged him. After a while, she said in a muffled voice, "No, little liar." He bit her, his voice filled with eagerness. It was an expansion of a certain emotion that had nothing to do with the body. Although they had been husband and wife for many years, he felt that he loved her more and more every day. However, he often felt a little unsatisfied because he didn't get a response. The one who loved the most must be like this. Suddenly, he thought of Huan in the past. Did she have such a hard time in the past? Did she love him for more than 10 years? Did she give birth to a son for him? Yet, he didn't know anything about it, and even hated her. As Yimubai thought about it, he felt as though the past had been stirred up. He placed her under the blanket and stood by the bedside, leaning against her face. Wen Yuan clearly wanted to sleep, but he couldn't accept it. He wanted to talk to her. "Wen Yuan." He called out her name in a low voice. "Did you have such a hard time all those years? Did you hate me and blame me? Did you want to give up?" As he said that, his voice was a little bitter. It wasn't for himself, but for her. At that moment, Mr. Yi felt that he was a little childish. So what if he loved her more? So what if he cared for her more? As long as she was happy, as long as he was in her heart, it was fine. No matter how angry she would still make a bowl of noodles for him. She would leave the light on and wait for him here. This was Wen Yuan's love. It had always been for him, never for anyone else. If she wasn't more determined, she wouldn't have to work so hard. And now he asked her. Wen Yuan didn't answer for a long time, so he thought she was asleep. Just as he was about to bend down to kiss her goodnight, he froze. Wen Yuan cried. She did not cry out, nor did she make a single sound. There were only 2 drops of hot tears at the corners of her eyes. Yimubai was stunned. Then, he reached out and touched it gently. It was hot and scalding, just like his current mood. It was as if he had been scalded. Later, Wen Yuan put her hands flat on the pillow and said in a low voice, "Yes, I thought about giving up, but I had Xiangnan at that time." After saying that, she opened her eyes and looked at him. "Those years were very hard. When we separated, you said you didn't want me. When you said you hated me, it was also very painful. I don't know why I persisted for so long, and I don't know why I didn't leave earlier. Even now, when I think about it, sometimes I feel a little unwilling. But when I wake up and see you by my side, I feel that the past is like a dream. Those hurt and pain never existed, and the happiness in my hands is real. Chapter 4509. After saying that, when Yuan looks at Yi Mubai quietly, 2 drops of tears roll down from the corners of her eyes. She looks a little fragile. This is something that Wen Yuan rarely shows. Yi Mubai feels sorry for her. He says in a low and hoarse voice, "Wen Yuan, don't cry." As soon as she cries, he feels that he has bullied her. And in those years, he has indeed bullied her. He knows that she likes someone else, but he still wants to be with her. She has spent so much effort, but he only thinks that she is vicious. Yi Mubai feels sad. He lowers his head and sticks to her face. He says in a very gentle voice, "Don't cry, Wen Yuan. It's my fault." "Of course it's your fault." Wen Yuan bites her lips and buries her face in the pillow as if she is avoiding it. Because the tears are a little wet and hot, it must be very uncomfortable. Yi Mubai feels sorry for her. He holds her face with one hand and says in a low and hoarse voice, "Good girl. Get up and wash your face. It's not comfortable to sleep like this." Wen Yuan doesn't move. She just lies on the bed, acting like a spoiled child. Yi Mubai's jealousy has long been dispelled. He murmurs helplessly and gently, "If you don't get up, I will carry you." "Then carry me," Wen Yuan says as she puts her arms around his neck. "You haven't carried me for a long time." "Princess Carrie." He laughs in a low voice. His laughter is very masculine. Then he lowers his head to touch her forehead and murmurs, "Wen Yuan, how old are you? You still want to carry me?" Yi Hui is not as delicate as you are now. "Anyway, it's late." "It doesn't matter if it's late." Wen Yuan leaned on his shoulder and glanced at him. "Do you like duo or me?" Mr. Yi thinks for a while and says, "I don't think it's a parallel relationship. I think it should be a sequential relationship." Wen Yuan glances at him and then leans on him. She says in a low voice, "Mr. Yi, you are getting better and better at sweet talking." "Really?" He smiled, and his voice became softer as he leaned against her. "Now can I hold you and help you wipe your face?" Wen Yuan didn't say anything and just hugged him tightly. Yi Mubai smiled again. His smile was very gentle. When he carried her up, he couldn't help but kiss her. His voice was also low. "Were you waiting for me just now? Is there such a thing?" Wen Yuan also played dumb and opened his eyes innocently. He was so angry that he bit her. "Mrs. Yi, concentrate." Wen Yuan smiled and leaned his head on his shoulder. Then he murmured, "I suddenly miss Yi Hui and Xiangnan very much. I don't want it all." Yi Mubai kissed her. "Isn't it good for the two of us to stay at home? You were angry with me before that." She glanced at him. After that, it was a very happy thing. They huddled together to watch TV and chat. A childless night was warm and romantic. The next day, they went to Su Fu's place to pick up the child and return to the Yi family's mansion. Yi Zhengang still lived alone in the Yi family's mansion. After losing Su Fu, he was alone. There were only 2 or 3 servants at home to take care of him. In recent years, he looked older and older. He also liked the children to go to his place. Today, all the children arrived, including by Anan, Xiangnan, and Yi Hui. When Yi Mubai's car stopped, Yi Zhengang came out of the hall to greet them. When he saw the people getting out of the car, his old face darkened. Chapter 4510. Wen Yuan's voice was a little low. "Dad still can't forget Mom. He looks quite lonely." At this moment, the 2 children had already run over. Yi Mubai stopped. Wen Yuan tilted his head. "Why aren't you leaving?" Yi Mubai's voice was low. "What I want to say is, if it were me, I wouldn't be able to forget her either." Wen Yuan looked at her. "What did you do to make me leave?" "No." Yi Mubai smiled and put his arm around her shoulder. "I wouldn't dare." As he said this, he brought her over to Yi Zhengang. Yi Zhengang had just finished giving the children red packets. At this moment, he took out a thick one and gave it to Wen Yuan. "Thank you, Dad." Wen Yuan smiled and accepted it without refusing. Yi Mubai, who was at the side, stroke her hair to show his appreciation. Wen Yuan glanced at him and stuffed a red packet into his coat pocket. Yi Mubai only smiled indulgently. Yi Zhengang looked at his children. They had grown up and had children. Moreover, they were so close to Wen Yuan. He used to be such a good couple with Su Fu. They were envied by everyone. He destroyed everything with his own hands. Although his children and grandchildren were around him now, there was still one person missing. Su Fu who read books, Su Fu who planted flowers and plants at home, Su Fu who washed his clothes and cooked for him. Every Su Fu was a memory and a pain in his heart. Yi Zhengang took a deep breath and felt the dull pain in his chest. However, he still forced a smile, as if the pain in his heart didn't exist. As a son, how could he not know? Yi Mubai gestured for Wen Yuan to take care of the children first. He and Yi Zhengang smoked outside. After the father and son smoked 2 cigarettes together, Yi Zhengang said in a hoarse voice, "How is your mother? How is she?" Yi Mubai knew that he had let it go, so he patted him on the shoulder. "I'm fine. He even went to the gym recently. He looks quite young." Yi Zhengang was in a trance again. After a while, he said in a low voice, "Your mother has always been beautiful. She has always been like that. No one can compare to her." After saying that, he sighed. He sounded quite pitiful. Yi Mubai patted his father's shoulder again. "Why don't I find you someone younger and better looking?" Yi Zhengang rolled his eyes at his son. "Do you think I'm the kind of person who can't stand loneliness?" But as he spoke, he couldn't help but sigh. Then, he lowered his eyes, and there was a faint light in his eyes. He took a long drag on his cigarette and said in a low voice, "Mubai, if I hadn't, your mother would still be here. She should be fine." He loved Su Fu, but he broke her heart again and again. Su Fu used to love him like that, and she loved him much more passionately than she loved Hao Yin now. After all, they were a young couple. They gave everything to each other. He didn't cherish such a precious thing as time went by, and now he had to suffer in regret and longing every day. His and Su Fu's bedroom was still the same as before. Their wedding photo had been broken by her once. He asked someone to fix it and hang it up again, but he didn't let anyone go in or see it, because she was always someone else's wife. Yi Zhengang sighed again and didn't say a word, and Yi Mubai knew that. "Go in, Dad. Smoke less in the future." Chapter 45:11. Yi Zhengang looked at his youngest son and let out a long sigh. "It doesn't matter if I smoke less or more." Yi Mubai was speechless, but he still walked into the living room with Yi Zhengang. Apart from Wen Yuan, Yi Mulin and Bai Shiuli were there too. Bai Anan was also there, playing with Xiangnan and Yi Hui. Yi was a little younger than them. She looked cute when she chased after them. The adults looked at the 3 kids and thought they were very cute. Among the kids, Yi Hui was the prettiest. She inherited Yi Mubai's perfect appearance and was as delicate as a porcelain doll. Bai Anan was much older. She was about 10 years old. She was tall and had a pair of beautiful eyes and eyebrows. She was about 160 centimeters tall. She was also very good-looking. Of course, Yi Hui was more delicate. She was the youngest and most spoiled. Besides, Yi Xiangnan loved his sister very much. Yi Mubai walked over and greeted Bai Shiuli casually. Then he sat with his brother and talked about current affairs. Yi Mulin was in the prime of his life, and his position was also very high. The Yi family was like the sun in the sky, even more dazzling than when Yi Zhengang was in power. When the men talked about business, the women naturally talked about beauty, makeup, and jewelry. As the women of the Yi family, they were naturally not sure of money. Wen Yuan swore that she was not a squanderer before, but she was definitely led astray after she got together with Shirley. She also told Yi Mubai about this, but Mr. Yi didn't even look at her 10 million yuan bill. He was still looking at his business newspaper, and then he said indifferently, "What kind of woman is a woman if she is not a squanderer?" That time, Wen Yuan was shocked. She grabbed the newspaper from his hand and said, "That's your point of view. Then why don't you like Shirley? She's a spendthrift. Don't you know?" Then, Mrs. Qin blabbered on and on. 10 minutes later, she looked at Yi Mubai, hoping that her husband could give her some suggestions or opinions. But there was nothing at all. Mr. Yi just looked at her and then said very calmly, "I just like my wife to spend money. I don't think there is any other connection. Wen Yuan stared at him for a long time. Later on, she developed the habit of spending money. Anyway, it would be a waste not to spend it. He liked her spending money. Now, it had become a daily routine. After lunch, the men got down to business. It seemed that they had a plan to make. Wen Yuan and Bai Shuili handed the kids over to Yizhenghai and went shopping together. When the car drove into the city, they thought for a while and wanted to ask Yi Huan to come with them. However, Qin Mo was the one who picked up the phone. Mr. Qin decisively rejected their request and said that Yi Huan was sleeping. After hanging up the phone, Bai Shuili looked at Wen Yuan. How is it? Wen Yuan was rather helpless. Yi Huan is sleeping. Bai Shuili bought a cup of milk tea and stared blankly as she drank it. After about a minute, she said in a low voice, "It's 3 in the afternoon. Why are you sleeping?" "Uh-huh." Wen Yuan was still smiling. Qin Mo said that they are on their honeymoon. Yi Huan might take a long nap this month. Bai Shuili couldn't help but complain. Do you have to be like this? Who hasn't been married, divorced, or remarried? Qin Mo is almost 40 years old, yet he's still so lovey-dovey. How shameless. He's really blinded by lust. Wen Yuan, look at how hard our men work to earn money for us to spend. Type panda literature into the search engine to find this site. Thank you. Chapter 4508. Chapter 4508, you don't care that I have 5. Chapter 4512. Wen Yuan smiled. He was too embarrassed to remind Bai Shuili how much of a beast Mr. Yimulin was. Everyone had a tacit understanding, but Shuili still dared to speak so righteously of Qin Mo. Her heart was really big. At this time, Yi Huan couldn't go, so the two of them went shopping together. They both had jobs, but the salary was not high, so the cards are all from the Yi brothers. They didn't even blink when they spent money. Shallow and greedy, these were Bai Shuili's labels. She was used to being a rice worm, but now she was slowly recovering. Yi Mulin had bought the publishing company for her, and she was slowly getting lazy. Yi Mulin's secretary took care of all the work. After a whole afternoon of shopping, they didn't eat out. Their men picked up their women and brought their children back. Yi Mulin's car was driven by his driver. After all, he was in a high position. The black RV stopped on the street. Bai Shuili said goodbye to Wen Yuan and walked to the black RV. The door of the back seat opened, and a slender hand grabbed her in. The door was closed again. Bai Shuili couldn't stand it anymore. She twisted and sat up straight. Yi Mulin, you can't catch me like an eagle catching a chick. Are you a chick? He smiled and then pulled her to sit beside him. He said with a chuckle, not a rice worm? Bai Shuili's face turned red. She bit her lips and stared at him. He took the bag in her hand and looked through it casually. What did you buy? His secretary called and said that more than 10 million yuan had been spent in his account. Of course, it was his rice worm who used the card. He didn't care, but he was curious about what she bought. However, he saw it. It was an expensive lingerie embedded with diamonds. Mr. Yi chuckled and squinted at her. He wanted her to say it herself. Bai Shuili stuck out her tongue and snatched the bag from his hand. Nothing much, just ordinary daily necessities. Yi Mulin smiled. At this moment, Bai Shuili couldn't help it anymore. After all, she hadn't seen her husband for a long time. She leaned on his shoulder and breathed out. Do you know what Qin Mo said when I called Yi Huan today? Yi Mulin was not interested in gossip, but he still smiled. What did he say? He said they were on their honeymoon. Bai Shuili put a hand on his shoulder and looked up at him. Yi Mulin secretly laughed in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. After a long time, he asked her softly, Then you think their honeymoon is not good? After all, they just got remarried. It's understandable. As soon as he finished speaking, his little millet worm jumped up and said with dissatisfaction, We've never had a honeymoon before. Not the first time, not the second time. Then you want to wait for the third time? Yi Mulin smiled and reached out to rub her hair. Then his voice was a little helpless and doting. I'm too busy. Even today is a break from my busy schedule. I still have a condolence meeting to attend tonight. Shuili, I know. It's the price. Her voice was soft. She looked at him and whispered after a long time, Actually, it's not that I don't understand. It's just that sometimes it's a sin to spend money. I live so comfortably, but you work so hard and your health is not good. Yulin looked at her funny. Shweli, are you sure I'm not good? Chapter 45:13. She looked at him and said after a long while, It's not as good as before. You always have a stomachache and your secretary doesn't know how to remind you to eat. Mr. Yi laughed again. His voice was hoarse and a little flirtatious. After a long while, he said in a low voice, Shweli, it's good now. I'll remember to take the medicine. You coax me every time, she said with dissatisfaction. Then, her eyes were glistening with tears. She had always been useless. She was already an adult, but she still cried. In the car, in his arms, and even in front of Bai Ainen. There were 2 seats at the back of the car. Bai Ainen was holding a tablet. She had long been used to her mother crying. Sigh, Mrs. Bai Shweli, who used to be very persistent, became very fragile after she got together with her father. Perhaps this was how a spoiled woman behaved. Bai Ainen chose to let her father coax her mother. Her father was very good at coaxing her. Usually, it would be a 3-pronged strategy. First, he would coax her, then he would kiss her. Later, she would stick to the door of the room and eavesdrop. Her mother would still cry, but she would be fine the next day. She and her father were even more loving than before. Bai Ainen thought to herself, getting better day by day. How good will it be in the end? She didn't know. She only knew that her parents kept changing their perception of her. She also knew Mrs. Bai Shweli's true colors day by day. Her previous strength was all fake. Now, she had lost her legs. Bai Ainen turned her head away. Even if they were in the car, her father would still kiss her mother. He wouldn't care about the presence of underage children. She didn't want to be taught anything about French or American kisses. Dad, you can do whatever you want. I can't see, Bai Ainen said considerately. Yulin felt that this child's IQ was 100% inherited from him. Fortunately, she had her good looks. He murmured beside Bai Shweli's lips, I have to go out for about 3 hours after I send you home. Are you going to wait for me? No way. Bai Shweli stuck out her tongue. Then, she put her chin on his shoulder and wrapped her arms around his neck. She sounded a little disappointed. Yulin, when can we be together? Even if it's just for 3 days. He was very busy. It was good enough that he could stay at home for 8 hours a day. This must be the price. He never gave up, nor did he regret it. She had no right to complain, because he was the one who had sacrificed the most. He had given up his favorite career as a lawyer and spent so many years of effort to be with her. Yulin, have I ever said that I love you very much? She whispered. Yulin smiled and looked down at her. What do you love about me? You're pretty and rich. What I like the most is your money. She wrinkled her nose and then smiled. I'll wear my clothes for you to see tonight. I know you've seen it. You're actually the most introverted one, Yulin. Still smiling, he held her little head and sat in the car with her. Such quiet times were extremely rare, so he treasured them very much. In fact, he had transferred a lot of time that he should have spent with Bai Ainen to Shweli. He wanted to spend time with Shweli, and Bai Ainen would have a man to accompany her in the future. It was like he was accompanying his rice worm. Chapter 45:14. The black limousine stopped at the entrance of the villa. However, Yulin didn't have time to get in. He hugged Bai Ainen and kissed her. Take good care, Mummy. Bai Ainen kept the tablet and nodded seriously. Yes, Daddy. Bai Shweli was a little shocked. Yulin, aren't you looking down on me? Mr. Yi smiled faintly and leaned over to kiss her. His voice was unbelievably gentle. All right, I'll come back early. Bai Ainen had gotten out of the car a long time ago. When Bai Shweli got out of the car, she looked at Yulin. He looked back at her and said in a low voice, I'll try to come back early. She nodded and thought for a while. Don't drink too much. Then, she grumbled, every time you come back after drinking too much, you don't even take a shower and want me to clean up for you. Initially, she wanted to say more. However, she knew that he had something to do and had to leave. Hence, she said in a soft voice, hurry up and go. I'll try not to sleep and wait for you. Yulin reached out and held her hand. Then, he said in a low voice, sleep early if you want to sleep. Otherwise, he would really feel heartache. No matter how reluctant he was, he still closed the car door. The black limousine slowly drove away from the villa. Bai Shuali stood at the original spot and looked at the car. After a while, Bai Ainin waved her hand from afar. "Mummy, can you come in? It's very cold outside." Also, it was a little silly to look at the car like this. Bai Shuali turned around and looked at Bai Ainin. She said softly, "Are you cold?" "I don't feel cold." Bai Ainin rolled her eyes and said with a line from the TV, "Mummy, you're really full of love." Being a Mother, Chapter 411, The End of the World. Chapter 45:15. On the television, there was a drama that she liked to watch. But now, she wasn't in the mood at all. She just leaned on the sofa lazily, thinking about him. At around 8 o'clock, there was a news broadcast in the middle. At 5 minutes and 6 seconds, there was a scene of Im Yulin consoling a certain group of people. He wore a dignified coat and looked natural in front of the camera. Of course, among the group of old men, Im Yulin's looks and aura were outstanding. He always had an unconcealable scholarly aura, which was inherited from Su Fu. And over the years, he had become more and more mature. Bai Shuali could feel it even through the screen. It wasn't that she wasn't worried at all. After all, her man had a high status and was so good-looking. But this worry would only last for a few months, because he would eventually come home. No matter how late, he would come home. Even if he could only sleep for 2 hours, he would still come home early in the morning. He would wash up and lie beside her, hugging her. Even if he didn't do anything, just hugging her was good enough. Slowly, she understood him. Although she was still a fool in his heart, she learned to love him. She started to reduce her work. She didn't completely stop working. She just picked some things that interested her. Then, as long as he was back before 1 or 2, she would try her best to wait for him. The rest of her life wasn't long. She understood him and wanted to leave with him. Bai Shuali had an indescribable feeling in her heart. She really wanted to see him now, but she understood that she had to control herself. In their limited lives, she wanted to accompany him as much as she could. She also knew that most of the time, he was protecting her. He was also afraid that she would be tired. So, when he visited, he was always alone. He clearly needed to bring his family. He was really good to her. Bai Shuali's little head leaned on the sofa as she thought about this. Then, she fell asleep. She was tired from shopping. When Im Yulin came back, it was already past 1 in the morning. The car stopped downstairs. The chauffeur looked at the rearview mirror and said softly, "Mr. Yi, we're here. We're here?" Im Yulin opened his eyes and wiped his face. "Old Lin, drive the car back and pick me up at 1 in the afternoon tomorrow." He could only squeeze out half a day on the 3rd day of the new year. Elder Lin nodded and got out of the car. Then, he opened the door for Im Yulin. When Im Yulin got out of the car, he was holding a bag in his hand. He passed it to Elder Lin and said, "Take this, I don't need it anyway." Elder Lin wanted to decline modestly. He knew that this thing was expensive and hard to buy. However, after thinking about it, he accepted the goodwill. His wife was sick and needed to drink this. Although he felt uneasy, he was happy and moved to take it. Mr. Yi had always been good to him. He seemed to be indifferent, but he always cared about his wife. He was also an old member of the Yi family. In these few years, he had seen more and more clearly that this child, Mu Lin, had other ambitions. Although he was extremely talented, he was doing his best. It was no longer just for Bai Shuali. Mu Lin was better than Yi Zhenggang. "Thank you, Mr. Yi," Elder Lin said with a choked voice. "What are you thanking me for?" Im Yulin patted his shoulder and smiled. "It's been hard on you to follow me all these years." Old Lin choked again. In the end, the 2 men actually smoked outside. Old Lin left, and Im Yulin entered the house. There was a small night light in the house. It was dim, and there was a faint fragrance in the air. It was a very warm smell. Chapter 45:16. Old Lin left, and Im Yulin entered the house. There was a small night light in the house. It was dim, and there was a faint fragrance in the air. It was a very warm smell. Im Yulin gently took off his coat and threw it on the sofa. Then, he sat down and smoked a cigarette to calm himself down. He thought about what had happened that night. To put it bluntly, it was a conspiracy. It was inevitable. It had become his daily routine. Xiaobai couldn't survive. In the time it took to smoke a cigarette, He had calmed down and got up to go upstairs. It was quiet in the corridor. He could vaguely hear the sound of the television. He knew that she was watching TV in the living room. He thought that she was really naughty. She was still up so late. Yulin first went to see by Anan. He didn't need to worry about that child. She was much more worrisome than her mother. However, he didn't neglect this child. Anan was very smart. He remembered that when he first met her, she was still a little girl who couldn't recognize the way. However, she had a set of tricks. When she grew up, she would be amazing. However, Anan usually had a very indifferent attitude. This was a little like Mubai when he was young. Yulin thought to himself proudly. This child was very strong. She had inherited all the good genes of the Yi family. Fortunately, she wasn't like her mother. However, he had some regrets. There was nothing wrong with a baby girl like Shueli. He would probably feel more pain. After seeing Anan, he returned to the master bedroom. When he pushed the door open, he saw his wife lying on the armrest of the sofa. It was obvious that she was asleep. Half of her face was buried in the small blanket. One hand was pressed down, and there was a remote control beside it. As for the television, it was still flashing. He looked at the screen and smiled slightly. He walked over and sat beside her. He took the remote control to the side and reached out to pinch her face. He didn't bear to use force. He wanted to wake her up, but he was afraid of startling her. Bai Shueli woke up and opened her eyes. She was a little groggy. "You're back. What time is it? Why did I fall asleep?" As she said that, she couldn't help but yawn and close her eyes again. But this time, she only half closed her eyes and quickly opened them again. Her eyes were just a slit, which made her look very cute. She lifted her body slightly and moved closer. "I think I smell a little perfume." Yi Mubai chuckled softly. "Mrs. Yi, you think too much. At this age." As he spoke, he straightened her so that she could lie more comfortably on the sofa. He leaned over and kissed her. "I'm going to take a shower. When I come back later, let's watch TV together." "You drank." Bai Shueli snorted. He smiled and said, "I only had 2 drinks." After saying that, she got up and went to the bathroom. After a while, the sound of running water came from the bathroom. Bai Shueli lay down and listened. She was so sleepy that she couldn't help but fall asleep. When Yi Mubai came out, she was indeed asleep, lying there looking pitiful. He immediately changed the channel and leaned against the wide sofa. With a sweep of his arm, he swept her into his arms. "Mulin!" Bai Shueli looked up and instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck. She understood him. It was already so late. Without saying anything, he lowered his head and kissed her. After a long time, he murmured, "It's so late. Don't wait for me like this in the future." "You wanted me to wait." She leaned against his shoulder and said in a low voice, "I wanted to wait for you too." Chapter 45:17. As she spoke, she was probably a little embarrassed. She buried her face in his neck, and he chuckled. That night, she simply slept on the sofa. The night was quiet and sweet. She slept until 9 o'clock the next morning. Bai Shueli woke up and looked at the enlarged Jun Yin in front of her. For a moment, she was still a little confused. He was still here. She pinched his thigh. Of course, it was Yi Mulin's. In this way, it was hard for a man not to wake up. Yi Mulin opened his eyes and swept her into his arms. His voice was also low. "Let people sleep for a while early in the morning." Then he kissed her with thin lips. "I was very tired last night." Bai Shueli blushed. Then, she obediently lay in his arms and let him sleep for a while. However, the man who said he was going to sleep opened his eyes again after closing them for a while. His voice was a little low. "Forget it. I'll get up and make breakfast for you." As soon as he moved, she quickly hugged him. "I'm not hungry." Yi Mulin smiled and said, "Shall I sleep with you for a while? When are you leaving today?" Bai Shueli lay on her stomach and looked up at him for a while. Her eyes were a little nostalgic and a little like a little fangirl, because he was very good-looking and charming. Bai Shueli reached out and touched his chin gently. "Were you going to retire?" she asked in a low voice. Yi Mulin lowered his head and ignored her little hand. His voice was full of laughter, but there was a trace of danger in it. "What, do you think I'm old, huh?" Then he whispered more dangerously, Or did I dissatisfy you last night? She felt his threat at once and stammered, "No." "Then what is it?" Yi Mulin chuckled again. "Make it clear, Mrs. Yi." Bai Shuili was just a little white in front of him. She couldn't say anything for a long time. Yi Mulin teased her for a long time and felt that it was very interesting. Later, when he stopped, he sighed, "It seems that we haven't been able to lie for a while like this for a long time." He reached out and played with her hair. "I also want to retire early, and it is old enough. We can travel around and make up for all the things we didn't do when we were young." If that was the case, he should have been happy, but at this moment, he felt especially sad. He was in a high position, but he had no freedom. Other than responsibility, there was only responsibility, and it was all for her. Bai Shuili lay in his arms and gently stroked his facial features with her fingers. "Then remember to eat and exercise well. I'll be with you in the future." Yi Mulin laughed. "I'm not a kid anymore." Mulin. Her voice continued to be soft. "We've known each other for so many years. Actually, we've only been together for a few years. I want to do many things with you." "Mister, you didn't buy it." He smiled and tugged her hair gently. "What can we do together? Tell me." Song Yinxian smiled and pulled her hair gently. "Tell me, what can we do together?" "I can. I'll do whatever you want." Little White said shamelessly before sticking close to him. "I just want to follow you." Then she heard him sigh. After a long time, Bai Shuili's voice was a little low. "Mulin, can I accompany you when you go abroad or somewhere for a few days? You can let Dad or Mom take care of it in for a few days. I want to be with you." His body trembled, and then he looked at her sideways. Chapter 45:18. Yi Mulin was silent for a long time. It was so long that she couldn't help it anymore. She whispered, "Yi Mulin, do you not want me to go?" "Why would I?" He came back to his senses and looked down at his wife in his arms. She was looking up at him with a layer of mist in her eyes. Her expression was a little dissatisfied, and there was a trace of care. He was angry, amused, and distressed at the same time. How old was Shueli? She was still like a little girl. He reached out to rub her hair, and Bai Shuili asked, "Then why do you look like that?" Yi Mulin still looked at her with a smile. After a long time, he asked in a low voice, "Then tell me, what do you know?" Bai Shuili bit her lower lip. After a long while, she finally said, "You don't like me anymore. I don't know anything." "Ah, you know what you don't know?" Yi Mulin pretended to be surprised. Then, she reached out her hand and hit him a few times, as if she wanted to vent her anger. He laughed. Then, she blushed and didn't say anything. She just lay there. Yi Mulin couldn't bear to keep teasing her. He said in a low voice, "Shueli, I'm afraid that you'll feel bored and tired. You'll feel that life with me is so boring. So, I'd rather you wait for me at home. At least there's an—" "I know." Her voice was also low. "But I want to be with you, Mulin. I always feel that we don't have enough time." After a while, she said softly, "I want to be with you." He didn't say anything. He just pulled her into his arms and kissed her cheek. "I'm going to make breakfast." Yi Mulin. She called his name. Yi Mulin chuckled in a low voice and patted her. "I'm going abroad for about 10 days next month. You can go with me, and it's not as busy as it is now. Let's take it as a honeymoon." He had already gotten up. He casually put on a pair of trousers and a gray sweater. It was very comfortable. She looked at him and said, "You're going to work." He laughed. "Then you don't want to go?" He walked out of the living room and looked like he was going downstairs. Bai Shuili sat there, her hair a mess. She shouted at his back, "Yi Mulin, it's not like I don't want to go. I'm in a hurry." Yi Mulin smiled. "Take a nap. I'll leave at 1 in the afternoon." In fact, it was getting late. It was almost 10 o'clock. He would have to leave in 3 hours. Perhaps, by the time he returned, it would already be late at night. Bai Shuili didn't know why, but she couldn't bear to let him go. She ran over and hugged him without thinking too much. "Mulin." Her voice was low. "I'm sorry." Her voice was choked with emotion as she spoke. Yi Mulin's back tensed up. After a while, he wanted to turn around, but she didn't let him. She hugged him tightly and apologized again. He smiled helplessly and gently. He grabbed her hand. "How many times do I have to say I'm sorry, Shirley? After so many years, I've long gotten used to this kind of life." Maybe it's just that I'm a little busy, but you're the one who can't let go." With that said, he pulled her back in his arms and lowered his head to kiss her. "In the future, you'll follow me wherever I go. As long as Baanin doesn't have any objections, it's fine." With that said, he reached out and touched her eyelids. He said gently, "You're already a mother, but you're still like a little girl. You cry so often." Chapter 45:19. Baishuli bit her lip and said softly, "I'm a little girl." He smiled and reached out to touch her little head. His voice was very soft. "You my little girl." With that, he felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. He hugged her and carried her back to the bed in the master bedroom. "Be a good girl. Sleep for a while more." Baishuli looked at him. "I'll make breakfast with you, okay?" "You can?" Yulin smiled. "Just lie down. I'll do it." As he said that, he pressed her shoulder and looked at her for a few seconds before going downstairs. However, Baishuli couldn't fall asleep. She lay on the pillow for a long time before she decided to get up. She put on a coat and went downstairs. She heard noises coming from the kitchen. She walked over and hugged Yulin from behind. Her voice was like a little lamb. "Yulin, you haven't cooked for me for a long time." He smiled and said in a low voice, "I've been busy." He paused and whispered, "Do you want me to cook for you all the time? I want you to stay at home all the time. You don't have to work so hard." Baishuli put her face on his back. Her voice was still like a little lamb's. Yulin smiled and made breakfast for her. If it was many years ago, he would never have thought that he would be willing to make breakfast for a woman, let alone when he was so busy. In the past, he was also busy. When he was a lawyer, he was definitely not as busy as he was now. This was probably because she was willing to do it. She kept hugging him like a little girl, and he enjoyed it very much. They hugged each other quietly, as if they could hug each other until the end of time. Early in the morning, Baanin went downstairs to get a bottle of milk. However, she saw her parents when she went downstairs. Here they come again. Baanin stood there and admired for a while. She thought about it and went to get a bottle of milk. "Good morning, Mom and Dad. You can continue." She could only drink the milk and go back to sleep. It was already past 9 o'clock. It was really hard for her to force an energetic child to go back to sleep. Mr. Yi said calmly, "Wait outside. It'll be ready in a while." His riceworm's face was very red. She pointed at the pot. "What about this? What do you mean?" Mr. Yi smiled, "Wait outside." Baishuli went out pitifully. After a while, she came back again. "Do you want me to help you wash it?" "You can." There was a hint of a smile in his eyes. "Stop messing around. Go out and play by yourself." Only then did she nod in satisfaction. After walking out for a while, she turned around and said, "By the way, Yulin, I've invited Xiangnan, Yihui Huan, and their mothers this afternoon." Mr. Yi took a sip of milk and raised his eyebrows. "Isn't it said that Qin Mo is on his honeymoon? That's why I called Yi Huan over," Baishuli said matter-of-factly. Yulin smiled. He really didn't know what to do with her. But no matter what, he still doted on her. She couldn't tell what was good about him, but it was probably good everywhere. Like new wife number 1. "Hubby, I'm addicted to pampering." New wife number 1. "Hubby, I'm addicted to pampering." Hit bar was the fastest to update. Chapter 45:20. But no matter what, he doted on her. She couldn't tell what was good about him, but she guessed that he was good everywhere. Perhaps he wasn't as good as others, but no matter how good others were, they weren't her. Also, how could he bear to compare her with others? Yulin smiled and continued to make breakfast. He was impatient for lunch, so he called the servants to come back and make it while he spent a beautiful morning with his wife. There was no scheming, no endless work. There was only Baanin. At noon, Yulin answered a phone call to discuss some business matters. When he came out of the study, he saw Baishuli on the phone. He sat down and naturally wrapped his arms around her shoulders, listening to what she was saying. Baishuli didn't give up, so she called Yi Huan again and tried to invite Yi Huan over. "Sit together." Yulin looked at his little wife disapprovingly and gave her a look. However, Baishuli ignored him and continued to talk to Yi Huan with great interest. In fact, she was not very familiar with Yi Huan in the past, but among the people Baishuli knew, Yi Huan was a very interesting person. She usually looked serious, but she could get angry easily sometimes. When Yuan was too gentle and wouldn't fall for it. So, Yuan was a little more interesting. Actually, Bai Shuili didn't dare to offend Wen Yuan because Olbai would get even with her. Her husband was looking at her, so she couldn't make the call. She couldn't convince Yuan at all, mainly because Yuan had a very possessive husband behind her. She hung up the phone and pouted. Yulin, I lost a lot of fun after marrying you. He raised his eyebrows, looked at her, and let out a long oh sound. Really? I wonder who was the one who said that she was sorry and wanted to make it up to me. Now it's no fun? That's because I want to meet Yuan. Didn't you see that she's on hot search? She's so beautiful now. Women talk about beauty when they get together. Bai Shuili was very righteous. Yulin pressed the remote control and said casually, they're newlyweds now. We're newlyweds now, too. Bai Shuili bit her lower lip. We've only been married for a few years. Only. He was shocked and looked at her for a long time. Only a few years? How old is Baianan? Bai Shuili? She's still a child, Bai Shuili shouted. Yulin smiled and patted her little head. You're also a child. She looked at him. Yulin blinked and chuckled softly. She didn't know why he smiled like that, but Bai Shuili's face turned red. Then she rested her little head on his breast and looked at him from time to time. Yulin was still smiling as he caressed her little head. His voice was unbelievably gentle. I've already said that you're a child. Then, the child threw herself into his arms and treated herself as a child. After Yuan hung up Bai Shuili's call, she looked at Qin Mo with a puzzled expression. Bai Shuili really likes to look for me these days. Qin Mo chuckled and said with a smile, maybe she likes you very much. Yuan was not silly. She looked at him. Is that so? He smiled and lowered his head to kiss her. I'll go pick up Yuan and send her over. You can go with me. We can go out and play later. You can leave Yuan there for a night. Something happened at home. I'll update tomorrow. Like new wife number 1. Hubby, addicted to pampering. New wife number 1. Hubby, addicted to pampering. My mobile phone updates are the fastest. Chapter 45:21. Yuan looked at him. Won't Yuan be a bother if she stays there? Qin Mo smiled faintly. He took her coat and put it on for her. Then, he put on one for himself and went to the Chiu garden to pick up Yuan. They were going to send her over, but they received a call from Su Chung, who asked them to go back for dinner. In the end, they picked up Yuan and let her play at the Yi family for the whole afternoon. In the afternoon, Yuan and Qin Mo went to watch a movie. It was a low-budget foreign movie called Munich. After watching it, Yuan walked out and didn't say anything. They walked together. Qin Mo was very tall, making Yuan look very petite. He looked down and saw that she didn't say anything, so he bumped her with his shoulder. What are you thinking about? Yuan pursed her lips and said in a low voice, Cat's Eye's score is 9. 6. Dubon's score is 8. 2, but there are so few showtimes. Qin Mo smiled. I can't do anything about that. Some movies are like that. They sell well, but don't sell well, especially some artistic movies. Yuan glanced at him and said in a low voice, I think I'm the one who got hurt. Qin Mo smiled. Your movie. He reached out and touched her face. It's selling well. Yuan was a little speechless. She felt like a little pet. She looked up at him. Qin Mo, are you comforting me? He thought for a moment and then smiled. It's obvious, isn't it? Yuan glared at him. She looked cute and funny. Qin Mo reached out and stroked her little head. Then, he held her hand. Let's go and pick up Yuan. Mom and Dad should be waiting for us for dinner. Yuan nodded. Then, she looked down at his hand that was holding hers, feeling a little dazed. His big hand was holding her little hand. It was very warm and strong, as if it would last a lifetime. Yuan felt a warm current in her heart. It was an indescribable feeling. Then she murmured yes. Qin Mo smiled and took her to the car. He picked up Yuan and went back to Yuan's parents' home. Uncle Kaim and Su Chung were preparing food at home. When they were almost done, Qin Mo and Yuan came back with Yuan. It was the 3rd day of the Lunar New Year. In the distance, there was the sound of firecrackers like the water in a pot that was about to boil. It was very lively. Qin Mo opened the door and got out of the car. Yuan got out of the car while he took out the New Year's goods from the trunk. There weren't many of them, only 2 boxes, but they were all high-quality goods that were hard to find. Chinamo carried it in and saw that Su Cheng was talking to Yihuan, while Yihuan was playing with Uncle Kaim. "Dad, Mom." Chinamo smiled and walked over to put the things away. Although they were remarried now, Su Cheng still looked indifferent. "You're here." Chinamo smiled and looked at Uncle Kaim. "Dad, shall we play after dinner?" Uncle Kaim smiled faintly. "Sure, but don't let me win. Dad is the better one." Uncle Kaim still smiled faintly at Chinmo's compliment. Of course, he knew that it was just a compliment. At this time, Su Cheng went to the kitchen to have a look and asked the servants to serve the dishes. After dinner, Yihuan and Su Cheng whispered to each other while Chinmo and Uncle Kaim went to play chess. They sat together on the sofa with the heater turned on. Occasionally, they would chat for a while. After half the night, Chinmo and Yihuan wanted to leave at 10 o'clock. However, Yihuan was asleep. Moreover, Su Cheng insisted that Yihuan should stay, so Chinmo agreed after thinking about it. Then, he looked at Yihuan as if asking for her opinion. Yihuan felt sorry for Yihuan. After thinking about it, she agreed to let her stay. However, when she got into the car, she was a little hesitant. As she fastened her seatbelt, she turned to look at him. "Why don't we take Yihuan back? It's not good to let her stay here all day, is it?" President Qin, who wanted to spend time with his wife, smiled. He reached out and rubbed his wife's little head. His voice was full of doting. "Why not? Is your mother not as good at taking care of the child as you are? Or is my mother not as good at taking care of the child as you are?" Yihuan glared at him. "You're attacking a chicken. Am I?" Chinmo smiled lazily. "I'm just telling the truth. Am I that bad?" Yihuan snorted and looked ahead. Chinmo smiled and started the car. Yihuan looked at the black carved door in front of them slowly opening. After a while, she turned her head and asked him, "Where are we going now?" Chinmo smiled. "Back to the condominium. Just the 2 of us." Chinmo's slender fingers held the steering wheel as he focused on driving. The car slowly drove back to their condominium. Chinmo turned off the engine and turned his head. "It's 11 o'clock. Do you want to go to the bar?" "Mr. Qin, you just said that you're not young anymore. It's better for the elderly to go to bed early." Yihuan snorted. "What do you think, President Qin?" New wife number 1. "Hubby, I'm addicted to spoiling." New wife number 1. "Hubby, I'm addicted to spoiling. My phone was the fastest to update." Chapter 45:22. After a long while, she said in a low voice, "Chinmo, you're shameless." Hearing that, he laughed softly, his voice hoarse. "She's my wife. It's okay to be shameless." Yihuan rolled her eyes at him again and opened the car door to get out. Chinmo followed behind, lighting a cigarette as he walked. However, he put it away after 2 puffs and caught up with Yihuan. She was waiting for him at the elevator door. After Chinmo went over, the elevator door closed. He looked down at her. Yihuan was disgusted. "You just smoked. You're not allowed to kiss me." As she said that, she pressed against his shoulder. The more she behaved like this, the happier he was. He said in a low voice, "It's not like you haven't begged me before. Have you forgotten?" As he said that, his tall figure formed a sharp contrast with her petite figure. His gaze was also clear and bright, while Yihuan was as weak as a small animal. Her face was red, and her voice was even weaker. "Chinmo," he smiled and reached out to rub her little head. Silly girl. Perhaps it was because she looked really cute. After a long time, the elevator arrived. Yihuan opened her eyes, which were filled with stars. The life of an old couple was, of course, a little boring. Chinmo went home to deal with some work. Yihuan showered and got ready to sleep. However, at 1 o'clock at night, Chinmo was still not back. She woke up, looked at the empty pillow, and then sat up. It was dark all around. The heater was turned on a little, and the temperature was very comfortable. However, Chinmo was not around. Yihuan lifted the blanket and walked out of the bedroom in her pajamas. Finally, she found Chinmo in the study. The study was filled with the smell of cigarettes. Chinmo held a cigarette in one hand and held his phone in the other, making a call. At this moment, he looked gloomy, as if there was something difficult to solve. He looked up at Huan and said a few words on the phone before hanging up. Then he asked her, "Why are you up?" Huan went over and leaned against him gently. Her voice was a little low. "Why aren't you sleeping?" Chinamo said hoarsely. Something happened. With that said, he stroked her soft hair again. "Go to sleep first. I'll solve it." Intuition told Huan that this matter had something to do with her, so she stubbornly stared at him, unwilling to go to sleep. Chinamo smiled faintly and said in a hoarse voice, "Are you disobedient now?" Huan was still stubborn. "You just won't listen." Her expression made him smile. His eyebrows relaxed, as if all his worries had vanished into thin air. "Go to sleep. I'll take care of everything," Chinamo whispered. Huan bit her lip. What happened? He thought about it and finally decided to tell her. However, he didn't say it immediately. Instead, he chose to get a coat for her and settled her on the sofa. He opened the window and came back to pour her a cup of hot cocoa. Sitting opposite her, Chinamo thought for a moment and said, "There's a problem with the release of Twin. Someone said that the second female lead, AI Meng Meng, has a history of smoking LSD. You know that the higher-ups have zero tolerance for this, so the problem is very troublesome." Huan was stunned for a moment. After a while, she said, "AI Meng Meng has quit the entertainment industry. Like new wife number one, hubby, addicted to spoiling. New wife number one, hubby, addicted to spoiling." The updates were the fastest. Chapter 45-23. But her films are still there. Logically speaking, they should all be taken off the shelves. Chinamo said very rationally and objectively, unless we delete all her scenes now. But the problem is that it doesn't matter if AI Ming Ming scenes are removed, the entire film will lose a lot of scenes of other important characters. He looked at Huan, resisting the urge to smoke, and said calmly, "I'll try my best to keep the schedule and AI Ming Ming scenes. This will not only affect the film, but also her personally." In fact, he had already removed several hot searches today, but there would always be new ones. They were all negative news about Twin and AI Ming Ming. It was obvious that someone had bought them. After hearing Chinmo's words, Huan was stunned for a while before she calmed down. What will happen if the approval department rejects it? The release will be delayed, but it will have a huge impact on the box office. Chinmo's voice was a bit cruel. Indie films don't sell well in the first place. With this wave of impact, you can imagine the consequences. Huan also knew how cruel it was for AI Ming Ming. AI Ming Ming would not take the initiative to touch it unless she was crazy. Huan actually knew that AI Ming Ming would not take the initiative to touch it. She looked at Chinamo, hoping that he could help. After all, this was her hard work, and AI Ming Ming and Rong Yu were married. Chinamo looked at her pitiful expression and smiled. "It's rare for you to beg, Mrs. Chin." "I'm not begging," Huan snorted. "I just think you can help." Chinamo held a cigarette between his fingers and played with it gently. After a while, he said in a low voice, "If this was easy, I wouldn't be up in the middle of the night." "Huan, when have you ever seen me like this?" Huan bit her lip and looked at him. He smiled and reached out to touch her hair. "I'll try my best. If we can't get along well, we'll think of another way. By the way, do you still have the film? I mean, the original one that hasn't been cut?" Huan nodded. "Yes, I also took part in the cutting. I have a set in my apartment." Chinamo stood up. "Give me a set of your keys. I'll go get it." Huan also stood up. "Chinamo, it's already past 1 o'clock." Chinamo smiled faintly. "It's already the 25th of January today. There are only 14 days until the premiere. How long do you think it will take if we rearrange it?" Huan was speechless for a moment. After a while, he said, "Chinamo, this is too tiring." He smiled, and his voice was a little hoarse. "This is nothing." Although he played it down, Huan knew how much effort it took to edit a film. Besides, this film wasn't shot by Chinamo. Then, she thought of a question and coughed. "Chinamo, do you know how to do it?" Chinamo looked at her with a hint of amusement in his eyes. "You're asking me if I know how to do it." Huan felt that she was talking about cutting the film, but Chinamo didn't mean it that way. She blushed and pretended not to hear it. Chinamo smiled, took her keys, and drove out. When he came back, Huan was still leaning on the sofa in the study, asleep. He put down the things in his hands and walked over quietly. He carefully carried her up and put her on the bed in the master bedroom. Huan woke up immediately. She opened her eyes and asked him, "You're back?" He nodded and reached out to gently stroke her hair. "I'll watch for a while. You go to sleep first." She remembered that he still pressed her down and kissed her. His voice was especially gentle. "Be good, go to sleep first." New wife number 1. "Hubby, I'm addicted to spoiling." New wife number 1. "Hubby, I'm addicted to spoiling. My phone was the fastest to update." Chapter 45-24. Huan wanted to accompany him, but she was too sleepy. She opened her eyes for a while before closing them again. Chinamo accompanied her for a while before taking his things to the study. He closed the door and switched off the heater. Wearing only a thin sweater, he sat in front of the computer, took out a thick master tape, and imported it. Chinamo had never taken a professional course, but he had taken a private course for about half a year. He felt that it wasn't bad. However, Huan's body couldn't handle such a heavy workload. Moreover, it was the Lunar New Year, so it wasn't practical to get staff to work overtime. Moreover, Chinmo knew that this was Huan's hard work, so he had to do it himself. In the dimly lit study, Chinmo lit a cigarette and drank a cup of coffee. He spent the whole night and early in the morning reading the master tape. He then watched the edited version of Twin and had a rough idea of what Huan was trying to express. There was a cigarette between his slender fingers, and he slowly took a puff as he stared at the blue screen. Smoke filled the air. He looked at the screen while writing something. It wasn't until 10 o'clock in the morning that he raised his tired eyes. Huan opened the door and choked. "Chinamo, how many cigarettes did you smoke last night?" Chinamo looked at it and smiled. "I think I had 2 packs. Huan stared at him. Chinamo smiled. "Why are you looking at me?" Then he looked at Huan. "Let's look for Rongyu later." Huan was puzzled. "What?" Chinamo smiled. "I heard that Rongyu wrote a documentary for AI Meng Meng. Maybe the script can be released earlier, but AI Meng Meng will have to work a little harder. You too. I hope that you will be in charge of the filming. As for the editing, leave it to me." Huan looked straight at him. "Sounds very professional." "Of course." Chinamo smiled and took his coat. He didn't look like he was going to wash it. He was really in a hurry. However, Huan couldn't let him work so hard. She bit her lip and said, "Chinamo, you should sleep first. You can go in the afternoon." Chinamo looked at her with his bright eyes. After a while, he murmured, "Are you worried about Mrs. Chin?" Huan bit her lips and looked at him. Chinamo said in a low voice, "Say something." Huan bit her lips again. After a while, she said in a low voice, "Yes, I am." Chinamo looked at her for a long time and then took off his jacket. He pinched her face and said in a low voice, "I'll listen to you. I'll sleep first. A good man should take care of his body and give his woman happiness, right, Mrs. Chin?" Huan blushed. After a long while, she said in a low voice, "Why are you bringing this up again? How shameless." Chinamo smiled and went to the kitchen to make some food. After they finished eating, he asked Mrs. Chin to take a nap with him. However, they only slept for about 3 hours. They woke up at 1 in the afternoon and went to Rongyu's place after eating a simple meal. On the way, secretary called. Chinamo was driving, so he asked Huan to pick it up. "Answer it. It's Secretary He. It should be about AI Meng Meng." "Oh," Huan answered. When Secretary He heard Huan's voice, he paused for a moment before saying, "Director He, I don't know who's deliberately messing with AI Meng Meng, but it's always trending. Tell her I got it," Chinamo said calmly as he drove. Like new wife number 1. "Hubby, I'm addicted to pampering." New wife number 1. "Hubby, I'm addicted to pampering." Hitbar was the fastest to update. Chapter 45-25. Huan looked at Chinamo and asked in a low voice, "What do we do now?" Chinamo didn't say anything. After a while, he said softly, "You don't like a female star very much. If it's revealed that she gave birth out of wedlock, do you think this news will overshadow AI Meng Meng?" Huan thought about it and knew who the female celebrity was. She was the most popular female celebrity in King Entertainment. She was someone who dominated the trending searches all year round. Even a piece of clothing or a bag would be on the trending searches, let alone a topic like having a child out of wedlock. It was a good thing that it wasn't exposed on Weibo. But Ihuan still looked at Qin and Mo suspiciously. Won't there be negative repercussions? Qin and Mo was focused on driving and smiled. I forgot to tell you, she's getting married. Ihuan let out another ah. Qin and Mo continued. The man's family is rich. In fact, they've been married for 3 years. This time, they're just making it public. Her contract hasn't arrived yet, so I can use this as a favor. It's not a big deal to be on the hot search list. Let Secretary He handle this. When Twin is released, she can attend with her rich husband. That would be the breaking point that would push Twin to its peak. That would depend on the quality of the movie. With Qin and Mo in charge, he still had some confidence. But for AI Meng Meng to appear as the second female lead, it definitely wouldn't work. He was a businessman, but he wasn't omnipotent, and he had to abide by some rules. After he finished speaking, Ihuan looked at him with a strange expression. Qin and Mo, I think you're very suited to be an unscrupulous businessman. Qin and Mo looked at her with an amused expression. That's an unscrupulous businessman. Ihuan, you probably haven't seen a real unscrupulous businessman. Her face was full of curiosity. Qin and Mo smiled. The Yi brothers are the real unscrupulous businessmen. Ihuan stared at him. Then why do you still want Ihuan to marry an unscrupulous businessman? Qin and Mo chuckled softly, then said in a low voice, Yi Xiangnan will definitely inherit Stars Entertainment in the future. When that time comes, Stars Entertainment and King Entertainment can form a super entity. Our Ihuan won't have to be a profiteer anymore. President Qin admitted that he was lying to his wife. King Entertainment wouldn't be affiliated to Stars Entertainment, neither would Stars Entertainment. Hence, Ihuan was still the rightful heir. Half of what he said was to make Ihuan happy, and the other half was to comfort her. In the future, Ihuan would definitely feel heartache for Ihuan's future. However, his wife was no pushover either. She immediately said, in that case, Ihuan doesn't have to work so hard anymore. She can grow up peacefully. Qin Mo's fingers gently touch her hair, and he smiled faintly. But if the two of them don't connect, then Ihuan will have to learn again. How old do I have to work? Ihuan glanced at him with a pitiful expression. Qin and Mo reached out and pinched her little face. His voice was low and hoarse. So cruel? You should be able to work until you're 60, right? She still asked pitifully. She still felt sorry for Ihuan. Qin and Mo parked the car by the side of the road and turned to look at her. But I'm 60 and Ihuan isn't even 30 yet. She still has to take over. There's no other way. As he said that, Ihuan interpreted another meaning. Qin and Mo, have you always planned to let Ihuan take over the company? Like new wife number 1. Husband, addicted to pampering. New wife number 1. Hubby, I'm addicted to pampering. Play bar updates the fastest. Chapter 45-26. Qin and Mo tilted his head and looked at Ihuan. After a long while, he smiled faintly but did not say anything. He merely stroked her little head. Ihuan was a little disappointed. She lowered her eyes and did not speak for a long while. Qin and Mo saw that the traffic light had turned green and started the car again. He sighed softly. Letting her grow up by our side and studying abroad at the age of 18 was the biggest concession I could make. Ihuan, none of the heirs of the Qin family left home after the age of 10. Ihuan was upset. She turned her face to the side and said softly after a long while, Qin and Mo, I know. I just can't accept it. She had been very free since she was young, so it was hard for her to imagine the life Ihuan would have to face in the future. Would she be like Qin and Mo, restricted in many things and unable to do as she pleased? As Ihuan thought about it, she suddenly asked in a low voice, Qin and Mo, are you unhappy? Qin and Mo did not reply. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel and snorted softly. Sometimes he paused for a while before continuing. The most unhappy time is when I know you like someone else. He had magnanimously gone to look for Rongyu because he loved Ihuan, so he had forgiven her. Huan was stunned by President Qin's awkward performance. After a long while, she came back to her senses and snorted. "Stop it. You're like a thief, crying thief." Qin Emo smiled faintly and did not say anything else. What he did not tell her was that he would never be unhappy with her by his side. After driving for about an hour, they arrived at Rong Yu's apartment. Of course, the atmosphere was a little gloomy, mainly because AI Meng Meng had been affected by the trending topic. She had been tagged once again, even though she had left the industry. Rong Yu opened the door and smiled faintly. President Qin. His gaze swept across Huan's face. Huan. AI Meng Meng poured tea for them. No matter how spoiled Huan was, she was still a woman. She could see that AI Meng Meng was very sad. Even though she had hurt Huan more or less, to Huan, some things were innocent. She couldn't relate it to AI Meng Meng and think badly of her. Moreover, she was now Rong Yu's wife. Rong Yu had always been indifferent, but he would always be affected. He could only force himself to stay alert. Huan was a little worried. Originally, she was worried about whether Twin would be screened, but now, she was more worried about Rong Yu and AI Meng Meng. If Twin was finished, AI Meng Meng's life would also be over. This kind of mental blow would be nailed to the pillar of shame for the rest of her life. She could not escape it. Huan looked at Qin Mo. Men were more direct. Qin Mo asked Rong Yu for the script, and the two men entered the study together. It looked very harmonious. Huan and AI Meng Meng were left alone in the living room. The atmosphere was a little strange. AI Meng Meng's eyes were slightly red. "Director I'm sorry to have caused you trouble." "The trouble isn't you," Huan said lightly. Then, she looked at AI Meng Meng. "You should know who it is. Why don't you say it?" Her tone was gentle, but it gave AI Meng Meng a lot of pressure. She did not dare to say it, because she cherished her relationship with Rong Yu. She was afraid that if she said it, the only happiness she had would be taken away. So, she was very careful. Chapter 45:27. Actually, Huan did not expect AI Meng Meng to say it. She was just saying it casually. If AI Meng Meng wanted to say it, she would have done so long ago. She did not want to force her. After that, they did not talk much and just drank their tea. The men were the ones who did the rest. Qin Mo spent the whole afternoon and decided to shoot a short documentary. It was about 5 minutes long, and AI Meng Meng would act in it. Actually, it was not. It was just a reenactment of the experience. Qin Mo walked out with the script in his hand. He stood in the living room and paused for a moment before saying, "Pack up. We will go to the border tonight." Huan looked at him. Qin Mo smiled faintly. "That is AI Meng Meng's hometown. We will shoot there, and when we return to B City, we just need to add a few scenes. This is a narrative and the best way to clear her name. Moreover, AI Meng Meng only has this one chance." Huan looked at him, surprised and understanding at the same time. She almost felt a lump in her throat. Actually, Qin Mo did things that he usually disdained for her. Suddenly, she felt a little touched, and an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. She wanted to express something to him, but there was someone else around. Huan could only suppress her thoughts and look at him, and Qin Mo could guess what she was thinking. He looked at her quietly for a while and smiled. Huan's face suddenly turned red. Qin Mo turned his head. "Let's go back and pack up. We will meet at the airport at 8. With that, he was about to leave with Huan when Rong Yu called out to him. "President Qin." Qin Mo turned back. Rong Yu's voice was a little hoarse. "Thank you," Qin Mo said faintly. "You're welcome. The conditions there are a little tough. Bring some medicine or something." With that, he left with Huan. After getting into the car, just as Qin Mo was about to start the engine, Huan held his arm and said softly, "Qin Mo, thank you." "What's wrong?" Qin Mo smiled. "They are thanking me one by one." Huan continued to look at him without saying a word. Qin Mo pinched her cheeks. "Huan, don't forget that I'm your husband. It's only right for me to do anything for you. Isn't that what a married couple is supposed to do?" Huan was a little dazed. After a long time, she leaned over and pressed her face against his arm. Qin Mo lowered his head and looked at her tenderly. Just like that, they spent about 10 minutes alone before Chin and Mo started the car. When he parked his car downstairs, it was already 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sky was getting dark. After returning home, they had a simple meal. Then, Chin and Mo made arrangements and asked Huan to pack her luggage. This was the first time Huan had helped Chin and Mo pack his luggage. She opened his closet and took out 2 sets of clothes and a jacket. She did the same for herself. Chin and Mo said while talking on the phone, "I only have a jacket. I can't fit it in my suitcase. Plus, I'll be back in a few days." "Oh," Huan replied and took out his jacket. Chin and Mo continued to make phone calls while preparing the medicine and some other things. Huan looked at him and felt that he was a little idiot. After hanging up, Chin and Mo passed the phone to Huan and squatted down to close his suitcase. Standing up, he looked at Huan and sighed softly. "I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to adapt there. It's a tough environment, even though it's only for 5 days. Chapter 45:28. Chin and Mo looked at her and gently ruffled her hair. His voice was even lower. "It's mainly because you're not feeling well now. I wouldn't have worried if it was before." Huan shook her head. "I'm much better now." But she coughed after saying that. Chin and Mo looked at her. "You think you're fine? Look at how delicate you are." "I'm not." Huan pursed her lips and looked at him. Chin and Mo took the scarf and gloves from the side and helped her put them on one by one. It was very tight. It was 6:40 p.m. when they set off. Chin and Mo drove to the airport. In the car, Huan asked him, "Can we rent the equipment locally?" It would take too long to transport it by car. The journey would take about 2 days, and they wouldn't be able to make it in time. She was afraid that they wouldn't be able to rent it locally. Chin and Mo held the steering wheel and said calmly, "Don't worry, the equipment will be sent on a private plane. King Entertainment's best team will be there too. We're just short of a director." Of course, he would also bring the editing equipment so that he could work while Huan was filming. The environment might not be good, but it would only be for a few days. He would be fine once he got through this. Chin Mo's car stopped at the airport. He held Huan's fingers and got out of the car. "Take the bag, I'll take the luggage." Huan nodded and took a big bag. It was all for work, and she didn't have many daily necessities. Before boarding the plane, Chin and Mo received a call. Huan was waiting for him at the boarding gate. She saw that his expression was a little serious, so she asked him softly, "What's wrong, Chin Mo Wei?" Chin Mo's voice was a little low. AIG's new film is scheduled for 214, and it's a commercial film. He was the CEO of King Entertainment. Of course, he knew about the movie, but the female lead wasn't AIG. But now, Chin and Mo said, "Got it." Then, he looked at Huan. He knew she heard it, so he just smiled and said, "Let's go." Huan caught up with him and asked softly, "She did it on purpose, didn't she? She was the one who caused AI Meng Meng to be on the hot search list, right?" Chin and Mo stared at her for a long while before smiling. "That's not important." Huan immediately asked him, "Then what's important?" "The most important thing is to do your own thing." Chin and Mo held her hand tightly. Rongyu and AI Meng Meng also came over. Rongyu's expression was very bad, while AI Meng Meng looked worried. "Rongyu, I can go by myself. You don't have to follow me." Chin and Mo walked over and looked at the time. "Let's go together. It's getting late." AI Meng Meng wanted to say something, but stopped. Rongyu tightened his grip on her hand and said in a low voice, "Let's go. People will be suspicious if I stay." This was not just a reshoot, but also a trade secret. In the end, the group boarded the private plane together. Soon, the private plane took off and headed for a certain border area. The private plane stopped at the airport, and then a helicopter flew in. The place was very secluded. When the helicopter landed, Huan looked around and couldn't believe there was such a place. That small house was a hotel. Huan looked at Chin and Mo. Chin and Mo shrugged and said, "It's a hotel." Poor director, he had filmed mostly urban art films in the past, and the locations were not bad. He had never been to a place like this. Chapter 45:29. She looked at him in a daze. Chin and Mo chuckled softly. "If you're afraid of bugs, you can sleep on me." "I'm not afraid." Huan snorted and checked in with Chin and Mo. There were about 7 or 8 people in the group, and Chinamo was the leader. It was already past 10 at night. He gave him the room cards and said, "It's getting late. Everyone should rest early and wake up at 6 tomorrow morning." This schedule was a little strict, but there was no other way. Time was tight. Chinamo took the room card, dragged his suitcase, and brought one of his family's dogs to their own room. It was already the best, but it was still very simple. It was unbelievably simple. Huan was stunned when she entered the room. She had never stayed in a room like this. There was a big white bed made of wood, the kind that would fall apart if not handled carefully. The curtains were half fallen and covered in dust. The floor looked like it had been bitten by rats. Huan looked at it eagerly and tilted her head to look at Chinamo. Chinamo smiled. "I've stayed in worse places. It's not that easy to be an heir." Huan was still eager. Will Huan have to live like this in the future? It was really hard for her to imagine that Huan, who was like a little princess, would one day live in a worse place. She was stunned for a moment. Chinamo smiled. "Girls don't need it. She just needs to be a female CEO." He ruffled her hair. "Actually, if you want her to be more relaxed, there's another way, which is..." He paused, and Huan looked at him. "What is it?" "A playmate." Chinmo's voice sounded like he was sighing. "Or rather, a spare tire for Yi Xiangnan. If Huan and Yi Xiangnan don't like each other in the future, this is the only way if you don't want Huan to work so hard." Huan looked at her husband and felt as if her worldview had been shattered. What's the difference between this and a child bride? Of course there's a difference. Chinmo's voice carried a touch of indifference. The other party's family background is not bad. She was at least the child of the family with a net worth of over 100 million. However, compared to King Entertainment's net worth of hundreds of billions, it was still a far cry. By saying this, Chinamo had already found a suitable candidate. He was just short of bringing her home. If Huan had been brought up in the Yi family, then this candidate was unnecessary and could not exist. Huan stared at him with her eyes wide open in disbelief. Chinmo's fingers gently stroked her face. "I have chosen the candidate. She is 4 years older than Huan and the same age as Yi Xiangnan. Those with top-notch aptitude would naturally have top-notch looks as well." Huan cupped her face and said in confusion, "Chinamo, how can you do that? Why not?" Chinamo turned on the air conditioner and took off his coat. His voice was almost cruel. This kind of thing is actually not uncommon in rich families. Huan's voice was a little weak. "But this is not good. There's nothing bad about it. He will become the vice president of King Entertainment at the age of 25. If he can't do it, he will be abandoned." Chinmo's voice was cold. Of course, all these years of hard work. Before he could say anything, Huan said, "Chinmo, don't say any more. It's too cruel. This is the game of rich families. You have to abide by it." Chinmo smiled faintly. Huan was stunned for a while before she said in a low voice, "Will Huan agree?" "She won't know," Chinmo said lightly. Chapter 45:30. Chinamo pinched her little face and said in a low voice, "When we are done with this, I will bring the child to you when we return to B City. You will like her." Then, he said gently, "Go take a shower." But Huan didn't want to. "What's the use of me liking her? I want Huan to like her." Chinamo carried her up. "Take a shower and go to bed early. We will talk about this tomorrow." But when he carried her into the bathroom, he realized that it wasn't a bathroom at all. There was only a hole in the bathroom, and it wasn't a very clean hole. Not only Huan, but even Chinamo was stunned. The two of them were stunned for a long time before Huan twisted her neck. "Chinamo, are you sure you stayed in a worse room?" The definition of worse was that there wasn't even a hole in the room. Chinamo was also speechless. He sighed and said, "I'll go ask if there are any better rooms." Huan's voice was like a little lamb. "You have already asked for the best room. Have you forgotten?" Even Chinamo was speechless. After a while, he said in a low voice, "So that's it?" He carried her back to the bedroom and thought for a while. "I will go down and get 2 thermos bottles and a basin. I have to wash it." Huan blushed when he said that. Then she looked at Chinamo. He smiled and went downstairs. When he left, he also took away the only luxurious smell in the room. Huan also noticed that the white bedsheet was actually beige with a strange color on it. To be honest, she would never be able to lie down on it. Moreover, she had bounced up as if she had been bouncing up. Then, Huan stared at a black cockroach on the bed with an indescribable fear in her eyes. Before she could regain her senses, she screamed. Qin Mo came up in about half a minute. When he opened the door, he saw Huan crawling on a broken chair and staring at the big bed. On the bed, there was a black cockroach. Qin Mo smiled and walked over to brush off the cockroach. He then opened the window and threw it out. As soon as he opened the window, Huan felt cold. Although this was Yunnan, it was still very cold and humid. As soon as the window was opened, there seemed to be a lot of mist drifting in. Huan felt a little cold. Qin Mo immediately closed the window, turned around, and pulled her into his embrace. He reached out and patted her head. You're timid and afraid of the cold. I really shouldn't have brought you here. How can we film it if we don't bring it? Do you know how to do it? Huan complained in a low voice. Qin Mo's eyes lit up. He kissed her cheek and said meaningfully, I know a lot. I've told you before, Mrs. Qin. Huan said pitifully, I don't believe you will. Qin Mo smiled and carried her into the bathroom. Although it was painful to face the big hole, Huan had no choice but to brush her teeth and wash up in the bathroom. After washing up, she went back to the bedroom and stood there, not knowing where to sleep tonight. Qin Mo soaked his feet and turned around. He looked at Huan and said, I'll put my coat on the bed. I'm sure you won't be used to it. As he said that, he pinched her cheek and said in a low voice, Don't be so sentimental. He took the coat from the luggage and laid it on the bed carefully. Then, he looked at her and said, Come here. Huan was anxious. She had already changed into her pajamas. She crawled over and lay down carefully. His clothes smelled good and made her feel at ease. Chapter 45:31. She lay on top of the coat. Qin Mo looked at it and actually felt a little disgusted, so he lay down with his clothes on. After lying down, he still smelled an unpleasant smell, which made him want to die. Huan raised her eyes and looked at him pitifully. You seem to have a stinky face. I thought you were used to it. Qin Mo couldn't stand it. He reached out and patted the back of her head. That was 20 years ago. Huan smiled mischievously. Then she moved her little head into his arms like a little animal, soft and obedient. Just when he thought she would say something soft, Huan's voice was soft and seductive. So, you've been living a luxurious life all these years, haven't you? Huan. It was rare for him to call her like this, but every time he called her like this, it meant that he was exercising his rights as an older brother. When Huan was young, she had to call him older brother. However, this older brother of hers had been unkind since she was young and had strong intentions toward her. Now that he called her like this, she was dumbfounded. She looked at him pitifully, not knowing what he was going to do to her. Qin Mo reached out and pinched her face. Your skin is itching again, isn't it? As he said that, he used a little force. Poor Huan's face was distorted, and she looked at him pitifully. Qin Mo smiled. Call me older brother, and I'll let you go, you heartless little thing. Huan cried out in pain. He was too despicable. She frowned and glared at him. Call me, and I'll let you go. Under such terrible conditions, he could still joke with her and felt relaxed. Huan's eyes were full of tears. She was bullied by him. She didn't want to give in, but it was really too painful. She could only call him older brother with tears in her eyes. Qin Mo smiled in satisfaction and let her go. Then, he swept her into his arms and moved towards his coat. Huan also moved with him and then said in a low voice, You're so scheming. He still smiled and lowered his head to kiss her face. Let's sleep. As he said that, he pulled the quilt over and covered himself with it. Huan was also quite speechless. She could only bury her little face in his chest. Rongyu and AI Mengmeng were also doomed to have a sleepless night. AI Mengmeng had grown up here since she was young. In fact, she could still tolerate it because the house she used to live in was even worse than this. However, Rongyu was not used to it. Although he was not born rich, such conditions were unexpectedly simple for him. AI Ming Ming was hurt by his expression. She said in a low voice, "Rongyu, do you think this place is bad?" Rongyu looked at her and sighed softly. Then he patted her little head. "It's nothing." His health was not very good, and he was in such an environment. It was indeed difficult for him, but it was also for AI Ming Ming. A good man should do anything for a woman. But even so, he still couldn't fall asleep at night. He tossed and turned restlessly. In the morning, Rongyu had a slight fever. However, he knew it and pretended that nothing was wrong. He took his medicine and got out of bed. Everyone gathered at the bus downstairs. Breakfast was biscuits and bread because they really couldn't eat the food here. The collection location was AI Ming Ming's hometown. The bus drove into the difficult mountain road and stopped 2 hours later. Hewan almost threw up in the car. Chapter 45-32. Chinamo looked at her pale face and was a little worried. He called secretary when he got out of the car. Hewan asked him what it was, but he just smiled and didn't tell her. So secretive. Hewan looked at him and snorted. Chinamo smiled. "It's a good thing." Hewan muttered and ran away. She wore a black coat today, and her hair was tied up. She looked healthier because of her work, and her face was rosy. She ran around and arranged work while Chinmo stood where he was and looked at her quietly. At this moment, she was the happiest. Hewan was at work. Hewan finished her work and turned to see Chinmo standing there quietly looking at her. She went over and asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Chinmo's eyes darkened, as though he was hiding a lot of emotions in them. However, this only lasted for a moment. He quickly returned to normal and reached out to gently rub her hair. He lowered his voice and said, "No, I just think you're pretty good the way you are." Hewan's expression was a little strange, as if she was looking at an idiot. It was also Chinmo's first time being treated like this. He smiled and said, "Okay, get ready." Hewan looked at him again and went to find AI Ming Ming. AI Ming Ming was putting on makeup. Actually, she had only changed into clothes that were a little more difficult to wear. Her hair was natural, and it looked like she was still living in the mountains. Rongyu was right beside her. Looking at her plain appearance, his breathing was gentle, as if he didn't dare to wake up from a dream. It was as if he was afraid that if he blinked, it would become a dream. He was afraid that she would still be here, and when he woke up, he would be in an apartment in B City. AI Ming Ming was done with makeup and looked up at Rongyu quietly. She looked a little uneasy. Actually, she belonged here. Everything in B City was like a dream, and Rongyu was also a dream to her. Now that he saw her like this, would he still want her? Her eyes were very uneasy. Rongyu was very meticulous, and he smiled at her. "You look good like this." "Really?" AI Ming Ming asked carefully. Rongyu didn't say anything more. He just tugged at her hair and started filming. Hewan was in charge of the filming personally, and AI Ming Ming's acting was also very good. While Hewan was working, Chinmo chose to edit films on the big bar card. After a busy day, he had a simple lunch. Originally, he thought that he would get the same treatment as last night. However, when he saw the hotel, he realized that something was wrong. It was as if the hotel had been completely renovated. Although it was simple, it was very clean. Hewan walked slowly and turned to look at Chinamo. "How did you do it?" It should be known that this kind of operation was very easy in B City, but it was still very difficult in such a remote place. Hewan looked at Chinmo, and Chinmo smiled. "It's airlifted. It's not hard." He said it casually, but Hewan was still very touched. Her little nose was red, and her eyes were watery as she looked at him. "Silly." He smiled and reached out to gently rub her hair. Then he pulled her in. Behind them, AI Ming Ming was also amazed and felt that it was unbelievable. Rongyu reminded her, "You have to keep your chin back. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.